In this presentation, we will record another transaction related to net assets being released from restriction within our not-for-profit practice problem within QuickBooks Pro, QuickBooks Desktop. Here we are in our practice problem. We currently have the open windows open. You can open the open windows by going to the View drop-down and selecting the Open Windows list. We're first going to take a look at Excel to see what our objective will be. We're going to be here on number 7. If we scroll down to number 7 in our practice problem, it says that income earned by endowment was used to provide craft education per terms. So the amount is allocated to the community craft education. So in other words, we're going to take some income that had been earned related to the endowment, and we're going to be spending it on the community education. And then, because we spent it on community education in accordance with a restriction, we will release assets from the funds of restrictions as well. So the first transaction then is going to be our straightforward transaction, recording the expense, in this case the community education, and crediting cash. So we're going to go to community education as the expense. I'm going to say equals and scroll over to that 945. Then we're going to go to cash up top. So I'm going to go to cash up top and pick up the credit, which is going to be going to the 945 credit. So we're going to credit cash. Cash is going down. The other side going to the expense, the community education. This will be the fairly straightforward transaction, and then we'll do the release from restriction next time, or in the next transaction. Let's first record this then to QuickBooks. Go into QuickBooks then, we're going to record this fairly simply with just a check. So we're going to write the check. I'm going to say we had a check, and we're going to say that this is our check field, and we'll keep it at the 25th, and the check is going to be written to, let's say, Staples, which is basically an office supply store. I'm going to say quick add Staples as the vendor. We're going to keep the amount, or pick up the amount of the 945, so we'll pick up the amount of the 945. And no, not a Q in there, and then tab through. And then we want the expense category, and we're going to categorize this once again as the community education. So community education, we don't have it yet. Let me go back here and copy it so I don't misspell it, right? I'm less likely to misspell copying and pasting. You can't misspell it if you copy and paste it, right? So we're going to pick up the community education. Pick this up over here and paste it, and then tab, and then we're going to set that account up. We're going to make it an expense account. That's what we want. So we're going to continue with it, and that's what we want there. So we'll save and close the amount of the 945. We'll put it into the class. The class category that we're going to have is the unrestricted, the fundraising. So we'll put it into the fundraising for now. We'll allocate that later. We don't need a job because it's in the unrestricted. We'll say save and close. Let's see what happens to the trial balance. So we're going to go to the reports drop down. We're going to go to the accounting and taxes. Take a look at that trustee trial balance. Changing the dates up top from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. Then we'll change the customized reports. Go into the fonts and numbers, changing the font, and we're going to change it to number 11. We'll say OK, yes please, and OK. So up top, notice I kept it in the bank clearing account. That's a problem. I wanted it in the checking account. So let's go ahead and adjust that. I can adjust that by going into this activity, double-clicking on the 945, double-clicking on the 945 here. I'm going to find that check. Notice I put it into the bank clearing account. I want to put it into the checking account. So I'm going to say OK, OK, and adjust that. I'm going to say save and close. Yes, yes, and we'll keep the number, even though it might mess up the account number. And I'm going to close that back out. And now it should be in the checking account. Double-clicking the checking account. There we have it down below, the 945, closing that back out. The other side then going to our community education, the 945 here, double-clicking on that. There's our 945 in the community education, closing it back out. Next transaction, let's go back to Excel and see it first in Excel. So we've done this. Now, paying that amount for the education has unreleased from restriction some restricted assets. So we need to do that similar transaction we did last time, pretty much the same transaction, different number. that we did last time. And you'll recall that's going to happen with these two accounts down below. Last time, I mean the last video we did on this similar type of transaction. So now we're going to have the net assets released. And the difference between these two accounts is the one without restrictions and with restrictions. I would think of these as credit accounts. Therefore, the one without restrictions is going up. These two accounts are always doing the same thing. They're unrestricting something. So something is being unrestricted. Therefore, the item without restriction is going up. I'm going to say equals and pick up the 945 to increase that one. Then we have the amount with restriction. And you can think of it as an income account going down, or you can think of it as an expense account going up. So we are in R26 equals, and we're going to pick up that 945 debit, and there we have it. So now we have the equal and opposite accounts here, equal and opposite accounts as we recorded it. The effect on net income total, no change. However, the items that are going to be included in what would be like the statement of income or income statement, the statement of activities, will have this adjustment. We'll have the column with donor restrictions going down in basically the income section, and then without donor restrictions going up. So that's what we want in our report in QuickBooks. How are we going to do this in QuickBooks? Well, we're going to record these two items. We're going to need to record these two items. We're going to need to record the classes for them, because the class will allow us to break it out between the with and without the restriction. Then we're also going to want to have more detail on the restricted item, and therefore we're going to use the jobs reports to do that. So let's take a look at what that will look like. I'm going to go back to the journal entry over here so I can flip back to it when necessary. So there it is. So then we're going to go back to QuickBooks. Okay, now we're going to go to our home page. Now we cannot do this with a journal entry, because remember, if I go to the company financial and I scroll down to the make journal entry, we have everything, but we don't have the job fields. I don't have the job fields here. I need the job fields, so I can't do this. So I'm going to close this back out, and therefore we need to use some form. The easiest form to use if we're just doing a journal entry but need a form that has the job field in it is a check. So we're going to make the check. This time I'm going to make the check go to the clearing account on purpose this time, the bank clearing account, so it doesn't go into our checking account. And then, and I shouldn't have made it the default. That's what messed me up last time. But in any case, we'll keep it going here. And then we're going to say it's at the 25. It's going to be a 0 check. And then the two accounts we set up last time are going to be these two accounts for the net assets released. So I'm going to say net assets released. We have the restricted. And then we have the net assets released unrestricted. Now we have the numbers. Let's put the number in there and then think about which way these should go. So it's the 945 is the amount. So I'm going to put 945 in both of them. No Q's. Why do I keep having Q's here? I don't know. We're going to go at 945. All right. And now one of these need to be negative because the check itself needs to be 0. So therefore, if we think about this, we say the check. All right, it's a check. A check is going to be decreasing the checking account. So normally it would be a credit to the checking account, and therefore the positive number here would be a debit. So we need the positive number here would be a debit. Any negative number here would be a credit. Now these two accounts, I would think of them as like revenue type of accounts, and the unrestricted amount is going up. It's going to go up with a credit. So the credit would be a negative 945. So the unrestricted needs a negative 945. The class then, for the unrestricted, we're going to put it into the class we've been doing for all the unrestricted, which is fundraising, which we'll apply out later. And then on the restricted side, we're going to pick the class, which of course will be restricted. And then we also want the job to track the job for the restricted item. So this one we're going to say it was an education program restriction. We'll pick that one. And so that's going to be our activity. Now, what's this going to do for us? This is kind of a complicated transaction here. It's going to do, first, if we have the profit and loss by job, we know that the profit and loss and job is going to have the 2 columns. In the income section, the amount that is unrestricted is going to be going up. The amount that is restricted is going to be going down in the 2 columns. And we're going to be driving that by the classes. Then when we want more detail about it, we can run about the restricted item. We're going to run the profit and loss by job, which will include this amount in the profit and loss by job. Let's take a look at it. We're going to say save and close and say yes. And I'm going to close this back out. Then we're going to go to the reports drop down up top. We're going to go to company and financial. We'll take a look at the profit and loss by class, changing the dates up top from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. Then we'll go to customize reports up top. We'll go to the fonts and numbers. I'm going to change the font size, and we'll take the font size up to 11. Okay, yes please, and okay. So there we have that. I'm going to minimize this column, or these columns, and there we have it. So now we have the restricted and the unrestricted. They're always going to be doing the same thing. If we go into one of these on the restricted side, we see the activity going down by that 945, closing this back out. On the other side, of course, it goes up by that 945. So then we want to see more detail for the restricted item. To do that, we run the profit and loss by job, because that's the tool we're using in QuickBooks to track the detail of the restricted information. We're going to go to the reports drop down to do so. Company and financial, we want to scroll down to the profit and loss by job. We'll change the dates up top from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. Then we'll change the font size, customizing the font size. We're going to go to the fonts and numbers. We'll go to the change font 11. Okay, yes please, and okay. So there we have that. If I minimize this number here, here's our total jobs for that time period, 2497. If we go back to the classes report in the open windows, 2497. So that matches out, that gives us the detail. If we go back to the jobs then, the detail for them are going to be these two jobs, which are tracking the restrictions. That's what we're using the report to do. Now also note that when we think about this tying out to the balance sheet, we'll have to make an adjustment using this report. We're going to want to see all the open jobs, for the time period that they've existed. And therefore, we can go back in this case just to 2019, and we can see the more detail for those jobs. So we're going to use this information to do an adjusting entry to allocate for the balance sheet equity accounts or net position accounts. And we'll do that at the end of the time period, end of the month, or end of year.